I'm hoping that you have learned well that there are three ways that economists can measure gross domestic product, which is the sum of the value of final goods and services produced in an economy during a time period. And that really is the first way, production. The second way is the sum of all incomes paid during the same time period. The third is value added, the sum of the value added of each firm within the borders of the country. This measurement of economic activity after the fact or ex post tends to be accepted by all economists as it is a historical statistical compilation of economic activity. What is of, in some sense, greater interest and indeed more controversial is the prediction of future economic activity, as well as policies to stabilize an economy or to influence economic performance if the predicted or actual economic activity is not satisfactory to policymakers and the general public. There really are two polar views that we can look at to predict economic activity and the direction of economic activity. One of these views is called the classical view. The other view is called the Keynesian view. Our task this morning is to look at each view and the underlying principles of each view. We will begin with a discussion of the classical view of the economy. The classical view of the economy is a more traditional view of the economy that directly derives from microeconomic principles. Generally speaking, it was the only view of aggregate economic activity that was considered by economists, principally until the Great Depression. In this view of the economy, input markets and output markets are highly competitive. And over time, and really not over a long period of time, wages and prices will reach what we call market clearing levels. If wages and prices are at market clearing levels, the economy should be at a full employment with no involuntary unemployment. I can show you this graphically by our looking at a simple model of the labor market. On the vertical axis, we will have the price of labor, which we can call the nominal wage. And this is the wage paid to a unit of labor, let's say per hour, maybe $8.50 per hour. On the horizontal axis, we have the aggregate quantity of labor employed, typically measured in millions of hours. The demand for labor is downward sloping. This demand is, of course, by firms wishing to employ labor to produce goods and services. Supply of labor is upward sloping, and this is by households, by individuals, by you if you're in the labor market. And it shows that at higher wages, a greater quantity of labor is supplied in hours. Now let's assume that the wage initially is up here at W prime. If I go across, I see that the quantity of labor in hours that is supplied by the individuals, by the households, is L prime, LS prime. The quantity of labor demanded by the businesses is LD prime. So businesses will only hire LD prime, which you can see is less than L prime S. As a result, we have this distance here between the two dots that is an excess supply of labor, a form of involuntary unemployment, meaning that these individuals don't want to be unemployed. They want to work at the wage, but businesses do not hire them. Now, the classical view of the world assumes that this labor market is a competitive market. And with excess supply of labor, just as, say, with excess supply of apples, the price will fall. And so the wage is going to fall here until it reaches an equilibrium wage. This equilibrium wage, or W star, is where supply meets demand, and the quantity of labor hired, let's call it L star, is such that at the wage, demand is equal to supply, and there is no involuntary unemployment. Now, you will learn later that there may be some people between jobs, but these people expect to be hired. It's the involuntary unemployment that has now gone to zero. When involuntary unemployment is equal to zero, we say the economy is at full employment, having only the unemployment of individuals between jobs. Now, that can still be significant, 4 or 5%. But again, the critical view is that with a flexible wage and a market clearing wage, the involuntary unemployment, sometimes referred to as cyclical unemployment, has gone to zero. Likewise, product markets will also clear so that the amount of goods produced by businesses will match the amount of goods purchased by the households using their income. And in fact, we assume that the income that is generated, remember the second way of looking at GDP, income produced, will be enough to buy the goods produced. And in fact, they're equal, remember from our first little lesson where we just began. This is sometimes called Say's law, after an economist, Jean-Baptiste Say. It essentially argues that supply will create enough demand that all of the goods will be purchased. The act of generating incomes will in turn generate a demand to purchase all of the goods. Thus, in the classical view of the world, we have full employment, i.e., no involuntary unemployment, markets clearing, and essentially the economy adjusting to a full employment long-run status. Thus, there really is not a need for discretionary intervention to bring the economy to full employment. This view assumes that markets are sufficiently powerful to achieve that result.